The world of handmade business can be tough when trying to monetize what you love. We've got truth bombs and motivation to help you find your way through. Passion to profit, let's start today, 'cause the world needs what you create. Tune in right now, it's your shot to learn how to be a handmade boss.
Hello everyone and welcome back. So today I'm going to be talking about trademarking. So trademarking is basically a type of intellectual property. So you might have seen people on Etsy get intellectual property notices, and basically what that means is that they are in violation of a trademarked name, logo, concept, basically anything that that person has essentially trademarked. And basically, the main kind of benefit of this is that you can put the little copyright, the little R symbol after your business name, and anything else that you trademark. So basically, it belongs to you. So intellectual property is different from copyright. And by the way, I'm not a legal expert. This is just kind of what I have found out on my travels and on my journey of trademarking my business names, concept names, all that kind of stuff. Copyright, usually you will have to check like at what level, but usually arises automatically within the UK. That might not be the case in the USA, and definitely as of recording this, that is the information that I found. But again, you will want to check this with legal bodies, legal experts, all that kind of stuff. But a trademark must be registered, okay? So basically you do this by going to something called the UK Intellectual Property Office. You might see it referred to as the UK IPO, okay? And this will basically run through a check to make sure that what you're trying to trademark isn't too similar or exactly the same as a trademark that someone else has. And then they will either accept it or reject it, right? So there are no legal obligations for you to trademark your business name, okay? It is a nice to have, not a need to have right at the beginning, okay? It really does, though, enable some powerful legal protection, because as you guys may know yourselves, or you may have had experience with, is that copyright can be quite hard to prove. There's all sorts of documents often needed, dates, times, proof that you had the concept before the person copying you, or maybe you need to prove that you haven't copied someone else. It can be quite a laborious task to kind of go through and really make sure that you're proving things. Whereas with a trademark, you have so much more protection, and it's legal protection as well, right? So essentially, if you trademark your business name, you will be the sole entity entitled to trade under that name, okay? So there's just a lot of legal benefits with it, which is the main reason why I decided to trademark not only my business name, but also the challenges that we run and some of the concepts as well, okay? Also, the big benefit of this is that it effectively stops people from using your business name or anything too similar to it. Now, the nuances of this are kind of a bit lost on me in terms of like how similar, but this is definitely something that the UK IPO office can help you with if you are in the UK. But it's really a case of, and I think this is probably the most useful thing, is that if you have someone with a very similar name to yours and you trademark your name, you might be able to essentially say, hey, I own the trademark to this. You can't use something too similar. And, if they then come out with additional brand names, something like that, it's a really good thing to have to avoid confusion, basically, because you are the only person that is entitled to operate with that business name, concept name, entity name, whatever, right? And it really helps people to easily identify your brand. Whereas I do think that sometimes, if let's say that you have Starbucks, right, which is obviously copyright, obviously trademarked, all that kind of thing. And imagine someone came up with a coffee shop name called Starbucks. Starbucks could quite easily enforce that and say, hey, that's like too close. We don't want to have confusion with the brand, with the people that are expecting to go onto Starbucks' website, but you're coming onto Starbucks' website or whatever. And it really does enforce this level of like brand equity that you have when you have some kind of trademark, right? Also as well, one other massive plus point is that it effectively increases your business's value because you've already gone through its trademark. No one else can use that name. So it's kind of like having a house with a massive back garden that you're wanting to sell. It's going to have a bigger increased value if you've already got planning permission to build something in the back garden, right? Because you've already gone through the whole process of actually getting that done. So it does increase your business's value, and it does really make it look attractive if you were ever to sell it. Now, the downsides of trademarking is that there is a lot of, so for me, when I trademarked Handmade bosses, and then I've since trademarked other things as well. Like I said, the challenges that we run, I want to make sure that I'm the only person that can run the listathon, the sellathon, the postathon, all those kinds of things. So for me, I started to get a lot of junk mail, because what a lot of people will do is they will go onto the IPO database, they will see your registered address, all that kind of stuff, and they will start to send you stuff. Now, luckily, I've got a PO box, so for me, my address isn't like visible. But that's another thing to kind of think about, is that they will have to have some kind of address. As far as I can remember, they need some kind of address there. And also, I do get a lot of junk mail, and I get a lot of scary looking junk mail, which is basically like your trademark has been breached, and it turns out like right at the bottom in small print, it's like sent from some weird office in like, I don't know, like Brixham or somewhere like that, that's basically trying to get me to pay for a service that's essentially free, if that makes sense. You also can trademark stuff yourself. I found the whole process really, really easy. I went on .gov on the Intellectual Property Office, the IPO database, and I basically looked it up myself. You will have to register within classes, and depending on how many classes you have, depends on the price. So from memory, it starts from between £150 to £200 to trademark a name. And the classes can be things like handmade business, jewelry business, candle, like all those kinds of things. And basically, depending on the amount of classes that you want protection under, depends on the price, really. So for me, I was doing things like business courses, business management, or like business school, business education, and there's like all these types of like classes that you can register under. So it's definitely worth thinking about that as well. If you want to trademark everything across the board, every single class, which to be honest, you probably won't need to, it's going to cost you a lot in terms of costs, because you're going to have to pay more per class. From memory, again, I think it was about £50 per extra class. And I think to trademark Handmade bosses, it cost me about £250. I did it myself. It was really easy. Also, one thing I will say as well is that it does take time. So it took me about 3 to 4 months, because they have to make sure that they are checking things over, contacting anyone whose name is close to or similar to, and kind of give them a chance to get back to them to say, yes, that's fine. No, that's not fine. It does take a couple of months at least. So it's not an instant thing. So if you are wanting it to be quick, it's not going to be like that. Unfortunately, it is very, very kind of long-winded. And yeah, it's definitely something that is not a 5-minute process. Also, as well, it's probably not worth doing if you are not going to use the trademark. If you are thinking of starting a business, this is your 5 to 10 year plan, you're going to operate under the business name, then I would say, yeah, fine. It's probably worth it. But no one has that level of assurance from themselves that they're always going to stick with that name. They are never going to change it. And, because if you do, you have to do another trademark, another bunch of classes, wait another 3 months. And yeah, it's it can be quite a long-winded permanent thing. If you are not sure about your business name, I definitely would probably say leave it until you are. And also as well, the other downside is that if someone takes issue with your trademark, now this can be that there's different types of trademarks: trademarking words, trademark logo, trademark like marks, imagery, all that kind of thing. And one thing I will say is things like a logo created within Canva, you can't trademark, but you can trademark the business name. So there's different types of trademark. So like you could have someone that has a different business name to you, but that has the same logo, in which case, if you don't have a logo trademark, then that might present an issue with confusion. I myself just did the name itself because for me, I'm like, someone's along the line is going to copy my brand colors. It's already happened actually. So to be honest, I'm kind of like, it's going to happen. I can't be bothered with the whole, don't use my brand colors, because I'm like already ahead of them. So if they're going to copy me, whatever. Copyright there is completely different. Like I have had people who have been in like the challenges, even in the course at times, even who've worked with me one-on-one, who has eventually kind of gone on to be like, I'm going to start coaching. And it's like, okay, there are some conflicts of interest there. And that is where copyright is a total different thing. And luckily, like I have legal advisors around me that can advise me of that. And again, like that's where getting a legal person on side with you so that you can ask them questions like this is great. Because again, I'm not a legal expert, but one thing I will say is that sometimes when you're trademarking, it can attract attention from other people. So if like, for example, you try to register Starbucks, again, let's go with that. Starbucks will get a little ping to say, hey, someone's trying to trademark a name that's really similar to yours. Then that brings the name to attention. They can potentially submit to have it rejected because it's too similar to theirs, and all that kind of thing. I also think it's really nice as well to be able to have that little R after your business name. I think it does command this kind of level of authority, and it does kind of say, I stand by my business 100%, and I've trademarked it, and you can see like this is a real legit thing. And yeah, I think that if you have a name which is a real household name, so for example, like Chanel, Gucci, Etsy even, someone will go to Etsy because they know the Etsy name, they know the Etsy logo, they know what Etsy's going to look like, they trust the brand, then yes, of course, that does make commercial sense to trademark the name because people have trust in that brand. If maybe, people don't really mind about the name, you're kind of still in the early stages of figuring things out, you're not really sure whether you're going to stick with it in terms of naming or even the business as a whole, then I would say no, it doesn't really work. Also, what I will say as well is that don't assume that just by buying the .com address, like the domain name, don't assume that just by doing that you have protected your brand name, because you haven't. People can actually still use the same like name as you, colors as you, whatever. And also, I guess the other thing with this as well is that it does put copycats off, especially those who aren't too legally versed in what happens if you start to copy a name logo with a little R symbol. I think it does just put people off because they see that and they go, okay, they mean business. I'm not going to copy things. But again, it doesn't really extend to things like products. If you want to trademark every product you have, obviously, as you can imagine, it'd be very expensive because you have to do a separate IPO thing every single time. But it does put people off from using your name. And, if your brand name is something that you've worked really hard over, you're really proud of it and you want to protect it, then again, I would say it's probably a good idea. Also, another thing to consider is if it is your name, so let's say it is stephcolelewis.com, the chances are of someone wanting to use that name is very, very slim, because I don't think no one else will probably have the same name as me. If they do and they want to start the same business, it's pretty unlucky, it's pretty unlikely, right? Or like the only way they would want to use that name is if they were directly trying to copy me, in which case it would be a little bit dumb, because if they're wanting to put content up and everything, then obviously going to see it's not me. And it can be also quite hard to enforce things like trademarks in different countries, depending on where the person is that's like copying you. It can be very hard to enforce it, like copycats from China, like all these things. It can be quite difficult to actually say, stop using this. But again, I think it does put people off when you do have that little trademark. People know that you mean business and they're more likely to kind of step away. So the upshot is it worth trademarking your business name? Well, yes and no. There are a number of pros and cons to it. I decided to personally do it because I wanted to protect the business name, the Handmade Boss's name. And I also wanted to protect the challenges and things that we run. Like I said, as Handmade Bosses gets bigger, there are more and more and more copycats that are cropping up that are literally like someone, and quite a big name within the business, literally bought my book and was creating courses and content literally based of paragraphs from the book. And I've also worked with people one-on-one who have kind of said, oh, I'm going to start coaching. And then it's like, well, there's a definite thing with that. So it's a good idea to get some legal advice to really understand the ins and outs of it. Trademarking is just the top level. And it is a bit of a minefield, but rest assured that a trademark does give you that next level up of some kind of protection. Unfortunately, it won't stop like copycats from copying you if they really want to in terms of products and all this sort of stuff. That is pretty much up to you in terms of how you're going to deal with it. Cease and desist, court letter, actually taking them to court. A lot of these things I've actually had to do, and looking at the copycats now, I probably will have to do. But again, trademarking does just offer you that extra level of protection, value, and it also, I think, it does put people off a little tiny bit. So thank you so much for listening. A bit of a shorter one today, but still a question that I've had a lot, and I would love it. It would be a real personal favor to me if you could leave a review of this podcast. As you know, it helps more people to find it. It helps more people to, well, answer the questions that they may or may not have. And I will catch you in the next one. Thank you so much for tuning in to How to Be a Handmade Boss. And if you're eager to boost your Etsy sales within just 7 days, then be sure to join my most popular free training at handmadebosses.com/conversion. You can also find the link in the show notes as well. Keep an eye out for our next episode where we'll be continuing our journey towards handmade business success together. And until then, keep crafting and stay inspired, because the world really does need those special creations that only you can make.